If war was the soul of power, then the market was the soul of life. Across the medieval world, from the burning sands of Arabia to the mist-shrouded harbours of Venice, the marketplace throbbed like a living heart. Gold glittered beside spice, pearls beside horses, and every trade was a dance of faith and survival. But a market was more than stalls and shouting merchants. It was the pulse of civilization itself, where trust meant more than coin, and a man's word could weigh heavier than gold. Before banks, before maps drew the edges of empire, the market was where worlds met, and where the Middle Ages learned how to breathe. At dawn the air shimmered with the scent of hay, smoke, and sweat. Merchants unfolded their stalls under linen awnings. Farmers led donkeys burdened with figs and barley. Craftsmen displayed blades, pottery, and cloth dyed in rare indigo. The soundscape was relentless. The clinking of scales, the call of traders, the laughter of children weaving between legs. But beneath the chaos there was order. Markets were the invisible network that held medieval society together. They dictated the rhythm of cities, the value of crops, the direction of caravans, religion, language, and rank blurred in the crowded alleys. A peasant could speak to a prince here, if only for the price of a loaf of bread. Each market told its own story of faith, hunger, survival, and hope. Some lay on riverbanks lined with barges. Others thrived in desert crossroads guarded by minarets. Yet all shared one truth, that humanity's oldest currency was not silver or silk, but trust. In the 9th century, Baghdad was not merely a city, it was the axis of the known world. The Abbasid Caliphate turned it into a glowing heart of commerce, art, and intellect. Its great market, Souk al-Kak, stretched for miles along the Tigris, each quarter devoted to a different scent, sound, or craft. There was the Bazaar of Spices, where pepper and cinnamon filled the air like incense. There were alleys of silk and brocade, where Persian weavers and Chinese traders argued over bolts of shimmering fabric. The goldsmith's quarter glittered like dawn, while the bookseller's district overflowed with manuscripts, philosophy, medicine, astronomy, poetry, each page a vessel of human thought. Ships arrived from India and China, caravans from Byzantium and Africa. Ivory, lapis lazuli, paper, and slaves changed hands under the watch of scribes and guards. It was said that in Baghdad one could buy anything, from a warhorse to a poem, in a single morning. The market was also a crossroads of ideas. Muslim scholars debated Greek logic. Jewish merchants shared coffee with Persian poets. Wealth was measured not only in gold but in wisdom. Baghdad's Cho was a mirror of its civilization, radiant, restless, and alive with curiosity. Cairo and Alexandria stood like twin jewels on the northern edge of Africa, one pulsing with desert trade, the other breathing the salt air of the Mediterranean. Together they formed a bridge between worlds, Africa, Arabia, Byzantium, and Europe. In the labyrinthine markets of Cairo, narrow alleys shimmered with brass lamps and silk banners. The Khan al-Khalili, founded in the 14th century, echoed with the hum of bargaining voices in Arabic, Greek, and Hebrew. Incense curled through the air, mixing with the sharper scent of tanned leather and roasted coffee. Gold from Sudan, slaves from Nubia, glass from Venice, and fine linen from Egypt passed from hand to hand beneath the shadow of minarets. Alexandria, meanwhile, was the city of ships. Every tide brought vessels from the Levant, Genoa, and Constantinople, their hulls packed with saltfish, wine, and spices. The docks themselves were like a living theater, cranes creaking, ropes snapping, the cries of porters and sailors. It was said that every ship must touch Alexandria, for no merchant could ignore its gateway to the Mediterranean. Both cities thrived not just on goods, but on information. Letters, rumors, and discoveries spread faster than caravans. Cairo's scribes wrote contracts that reached Venice. Alexandria's warehouses held goods destined for Bruges. In these ports of sand and sea, the medieval economy found its voice, a voice fluent in prophet, prayer, and promise. Far to the east, beyond deserts and mountains, lay Samarkand, the glittering heart of the Silk Road. Surrounded by golden sands and snow-capped peaks, it was both fortress and paradise, where traders from China, Persia, and Byzantium met under domes of turquoise and gold. The city's bazaar was a kaleidoscope of color. Chinese silk hung beside Persian carpets. Indian spices perfumed the air beside Byzantine glass and Arabian perfumes. Camels knelt in the dust as their masters unloaded crates of jade, pearls, and lacquerware. The hum of commerce was ceaseless, coins clinking, scales tipping, merchants shouting prices in languages few could name. But Samarkand was not only a marketplace of goods, it was a market of ideas. Buddhist monks shared tea with Muslim scholars. Christian envoys bartered with Mongol guards. Knowledge, like silk, flowed freely here. Every trader carried not only wares but stories of cities unseen, gods unknown, and inventions yet unimagined. The city's wealth was so great that even its dust sparkled. To walk through Samarkand's Cho was to step into the first true global network, a place where East met West not as enemies, but as partners in curiosity and ambition. Under its vast blue domes, the medieval world learned to dream in color. Venice, the floating city, rose from the waters like a dream carved in marble and salt. By the 13th century, it had become the beating heart of Europe's maritime trade, a market not on land but upon the sea itself. The Rialto market, its grand bazaar, stood at the center of a labyrinth of canals where gold, silk, and ambition flowed together. Here, German coins clinked beside Indian peppercorns. Ships from Alexandria and Constantinople unloaded crates of cinnamon, sugar, silk, and pearls, while Venetian glassmakers sold their shimmering creations to kings and merchants alike. Barges drifted beneath arched bridges as voices in 40 tongues rose and fell like the tide. Latin, Greek, Arabic, and the universal language of profit. Venice was both a marketplace and a machine of power. Its merchants acted as diplomats, spies, and bankers. Its traders were as skilled in negotiation as in navigation. Every transaction in Rialto echoed across the continent, influencing prices in Paris, Cairo, and London alike. By night, lanterns reflected on the water, turning the canals into ribbons of fire. The smell of salt, spice, and fresh ink from ledgers filled the air. Venice did not just sell goods, it sold connection. And in doing so, it transformed itself into Europe's gateway to the East. Constantinople, the city between worlds. Straddling Europe and Asia, it stood at the meeting point of empires, where caravans from the Silk Road met fleets from the Mediterranean. Its market, the Mess, stretched for over 4 kilometers through the Byzantine capital, glowing like a vein of gold. Here, merchants sold everything from Persian pearls to Russian furs, from Bulgarian honey to Greek wine. Bronze lamps gleamed beside mosaics depicting saints and emperors. The scent of frankincense mingled with that of roasted meat and sea salt from the nearby harbors. It was a city where the sacred and the worldly coexisted. Pilgrims heading to holy shrines brushed shoulders with mercenaries and scholars. Money changers whispered prayers as they weighed Byzantine gold solidi. Coins so pure that even Arab traders trusted them without question. Constantinople's greatness was more than wealth, it was its position. Whoever controlled the city controlled the arteries of trade between East and West. It was the gate through which silk, ideas, and faith passed, guarded by towering walls and shining domes. In the markets of Constantinople, one could see the entire world compressed into a single street, a living mosaic of humanity, faith, and desire. And as the bells of Hagia Sophia echoed over the Bosporus, even trade felt like a kind of worship. When Marco Polo arrived in Hangzhou in the late 13th century, he called it the finest and most splendid city in the world. Once the capital of the Southern Song dynasty, Hangzhou was a wonder of scale, a city where rivers became streets and streets became markets. Its population exceeded 1 million, larger than any city in Europe at the time, and its trade never slept. At sunrise, thousands of boats gathered at its stone docks, unloading rice, silk, porcelain, fish, and tea. By afternoon, the markets overflowed with perfumes, medicines, iron tools, and dried seafood. At night, oil lamps burned along the canals, turning the water into a path of light. Each district had its own rhythm. The silk quarter hummed with the sound of looms, while the tea markets smelled of jasmine and oolong. Officials inspected scales and licenses, ensuring fairness, while bankers issued the world's first paper money, jiaozi. Foreign traders from Arabia, Korea, and Japan filled the inns, drawn by the promise of profit and stability. Hangzhou's marketplace was not chaos, it was choreography. Barges moved with precision, and clerks recorded transactions with brushes on bamboo slips. The entire city functioned like an economic organism, sustained by waterways, discipline, and trust. For many, Hangzhou was the medieval world's living miracle, a city where commerce became art, and every exchange a piece of civilization. Far from the coasts and empires of the Old World, across the burning sands of the Sahara, stood a market that glittered with myth, Timbuktu. Under the reign of Mansa Musa in the 14th century, this desert city became the golden heart of West Africa, where the dust itself seemed to shimmer with wealth. Caravans of camels arrived from distant lands, from Cairo, from Marrakesh, from the Niger River, each carrying salt, ivory, manuscripts, and above all gold. The air was dry but alive with sound, the creak of saddles, the murmur of bargaining voices, the faint rustle of papyrus and parchment. In the central market, Berber, Arab, and West African merchants gathered under thatched awnings. They weighed nuggets of gold beside bars of salt, traded textiles for grain, and exchanged books copied by hand in the city's legendary scriptoria. Scholars, not soldiers, were Timbuktu's greatest treasure, for knowledge here was as valuable as gold. At night, when the heat faded, lamps flickered along the market square, and the scent of roasted millet and frankincense filled the air. The stars above seemed to mirror the golden sands below. Timbuktu was proof that even in the harshest desert civilization could bloom, built not by conquest but by trade, learning, and the belief that value could be found in both words and gold. Among all the bustling markets of the medieval world, none equaled Hangzhou. Its greatness lay not only in size but in sophistication, the first true prototype of a modern economy. In the 12th and 13th centuries during the Song dynasty, Hangzhou became the capital of innovation, where commerce was guided by systems far ahead of its time. While Europe still traded by coin and credit of word, Hangzhou used paper money. Merchants carried printed notes issued by banks, stamped with the seal of imperial authority. This allowed trade to flourish beyond imagination. Ships filled with silk and porcelain could be sold before they even docked. The market ran like a heartbeat, powered by trust and bureaucracy. Within its walls, thousands of shops specialized in everything from bamboo instruments to perfume books and lanterns. Couriers ran through crowded streets carrying invoices. Scribes recorded transactions in ledgers. Tea houses doubled as meeting halls for businessmen. The city was clean, organized, and alive. Its canals kept goods moving like veins carrying lifeblood. Foreigners marveled at its scale, the order, the peace, the abundance. Marco Polo described streets so wide that 10 horsemen could ride abreast, and bridges so numerous they seemed endless. To him, Hangzhou was not just a city, it was civilization perfected through trade. In this market, humanity's oldest instincts, curiosity, creativity, cooperation, reached their purest form. Hangzhou was, and remains, the beating heart of the medieval world. From Baghdad's golden alleys to the marble docks of Venice, from Samarkand's domes to the river markets of Hangzhou, trade was more than an exchange of goods, it was an exchange of souls. In every chow people bartered not only spices or silk, but ideas, stories, and trust. Each shouted price was a heartbeat, each signed contract, a bridge between worlds. Markets transformed strangers into partners, faiths into alliances, and isolation into connection. They were, in essence, the first form of globalization, fragile yet enduring, built entirely upon belief in one another. In the dust of those markets we can still hear humanity breathing, merchants calling across languages, coins clinking in harmony, caravans crossing oceans of sand, and while empires have risen and fallen, that heartbeat never stopped. For what began in the medieval market, the trust between buyer and seller, the courage to trade with the unknown, became the foundation of our modern world. Even today, in every crowded street and digital marketplace, echoes of Baghdad, Venice, and Hangzhou remain. They remind us that the true wealth of civilization is not gold or power, but the human will to connect, to exchange, and to believe.